The hotel room in Dubai felt like a tomb. Amara sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, her hands shaking as she stared at her phone. The call had ended 5 minutes ago, but her husband's words still echoed in her ears like a death sentence. "I'm leaving you, Amara. I've sold the house. Jessica and I are getting married next month. Don't bother coming back to Chicago expecting to find your old life waiting." 8 years of marriage. 8 years of building a life together, of shared dreams, of believing in forever. Gone with a 30-second phone call while she was 6,000 miles away, closing the biggest deal of her career. Amara forced herself to breathe. She was a successful marketing executive, known for her grace under pressure. She had closed million-dollar deals, managed crisis communications, and built her reputation on never letting anyone see her sweat. But this was different. This was Robert, her husband, the man who had promised to love her through sickness and health, for better or worse. The Dubai skyline glittered outside her window, a reminder of how far she was from home. How far she was from the life she thought she knew. She picked up her phone again, scrolling through the messages she had missed while in her client meeting. 3 texts from her sister Nina, 2 from her best friend Chloe, and nothing from Robert. Not even a follow-up message to soften the blow of his devastating announcement. Her fingers hovered over Nina's contact. What would she say? How do you tell someone that your entire life just imploded? That the man you trusted with everything had been planning your destruction while you were working to build your future together? Instead, she opened her laptop and began typing. If Robert thought he could catch her off guard, if he thought distance would make her weak, he was wrong. Amara had built her career on strategy, on thinking 3 steps ahead. She would not fall apart in a Dubai hotel room. She would not give him the satisfaction. The first thing she did was check their joint bank accounts. Her stomach dropped as she saw the zeros. Robert had cleaned them out, leaving just enough to avoid triggering fraud alerts. The house they had bought together, the one she had lovingly decorated, the one where they had planned to raise children, sold. The deed transfer was dated 3 days ago. 3 days. He had been planning this for months, maybe longer. While she was working late nights, building her client base, securing their financial future, he was methodically erasing their shared life. The betrayal cut deeper than she had imagined possible. Amara stood up and walked to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The city below buzzed with life, people going about their evening routines, unaware that her world had just shattered. She thought about Robert's voice on the phone, cold, efficient, business-like. Like he was canceling a subscription service, not ending a marriage. "Jessica and I are getting married next month." The words played on repeat in her mind. Jessica. The name felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. Another layer of humiliation. She didn't even know who had stolen her husband. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nina. "Can't reach you. Call me when you get this. Something's wrong." Sisters always knew. Even from thousands of miles away, Nina could sense when Amara's world was falling apart. But Amara wasn't ready to say the words out loud. Wasn't ready to admit that her marriage was over, that she had been played for a fool. She turned back to her laptop and began making lists. It was what she did when faced with impossible situations. Break them down into manageable pieces. Find the logical next steps. Create a plan. First, she needed to understand the full scope of what Robert had done. Then she needed to protect herself legally and financially. Finally, she needed to figure out how to rebuild her life from scratch. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was in Dubai, a city that had risen from the desert through sheer determination and strategic planning. If they could build a metropolis from nothing, she could rebuild her life from the ashes of her marriage. Her phone rang again. This time it was Chloe. Amara let it go to voicemail, but not before seeing the missed call notifications. 7 calls from Nina, 4 from Chloe, 3 from her work assistant asking about the Dubai deal. Life was moving forward while hers had come to a complete stop. She thought about the presentation she had given that morning, the one that had secured the biggest client of her career. The client had been impressed by her composure, her strategic thinking, her ability to handle complex negotiations. Little did they know that while she was closing their deal, her husband was closing the book on their marriage. Amara pulled out her suitcase and began to pack. Her flight back to Chicago wasn't until tomorrow evening, but she needed to do something, anything, to feel like she was moving forward. As she folded her clothes, she noticed her wedding ring catching the light from the Dubai sunset. 8 years ago, Robert had slipped this ring on her finger while promising her forever. She had believed him. She had trusted him with her heart, her future, her financial security. She had been a fool. But as she looked at her reflection in the mirror, Amara saw something Robert hadn't counted on. She saw a woman who had built her career from nothing, who had survived every challenge thrown her way, who had the intelligence and strength to face whatever came next. Robert thought he had won. He thought leaving her stranded in Dubai, taking everything they had built together, would break her. He was wrong. Amara Williams was about to show him just how wrong he could be. The flight back to Chicago felt endless. Amara had paid for an upgrade to first class, one of the few benefits of her corporate credit card still working. She spent the 14 hours making calls, sending emails, and building her defense strategy. By the time the plane touched down at O'Hare, she had a lawyer, a financial advisor, and a plan. Nina was waiting at the airport, her face a mask of controlled fury. Her younger sister had always been the more emotional one, but seeing her now, Amara realized Nina was holding back for her sake. "I'm going to kill him," Nina said simply as they walked toward baggage claim. "Get in line," Amara replied, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "But first, help me figure out how to destroy him legally." The drive to Nina's apartment was quiet. Amara stared out the window at the familiar Chicago skyline, thinking about how everything looked the same but felt completely different. She was homeless technically. The thought should have been devastating, but instead, she felt oddly liberated. "I drove by the house yesterday," Nina said carefully. "There's a moving truck there. And a for sale sign with sold slapped across it." Amara nodded. She had expected this, but hearing it confirmed still stung. "Did you see them?" "Robert was there. And a blonde woman I didn't recognize. She was directing the movers like she owned the place." Jessica, presumably. The other woman who had been planning Amara's downfall alongside her husband. Amara wondered how long it had been going on. How many nights had Robert come home to her while planning his escape with someone else? At Nina's apartment, Amara spread her laptop, legal documents, and bank statements across the dining table. It looked like a war room, which was exactly what it was. "Show me everything," Nina said, sitting down across from her. Amara pulled up the bank records first. "He emptied our joint accounts 3 days ago. Transferred everything to an account I can't access. We had about $180,000 in savings, plus our joint checking account." Nina's eyes widened. "That's theft. Not legally." Both names were on the accounts. Amara clicked to the next screen. "But here's where it gets interesting. The house sold for $450,000. We bought it for $320,000 5 years ago, put about $60,000 in improvements into it. So there should be about $190,000 in equity." Should be. The sale price was exactly what we owed on the mortgage. No equity. Which means either Robert sold it for way under market value or... Amara paused, scrolling through more documents. "Or he took out a second mortgage without telling me." Nina leaned forward. "Can he do that?" "Both names were on the deed, but if he forged my signature..." Amara trailed off, pieces clicking together in her mind. "Nina, I think Robert has been planning this for over a year. Maybe longer." Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop calling Robert. He's moved on. So should you." Jessica. Amara showed the message to Nina, who immediately grabbed the phone. "What's her last name? I'm about to destroy her on social media." "Don't." Amara took the phone back. "Let me handle this my way." She opened her laptop and began searching social media for Jessica. It didn't take long to find her. Robert had been careless about privacy settings on his accounts. Jessica Morrison, 29, a real estate agent. In her profile pictures, she was wearing the necklace Amara had given Robert for their anniversary last year. "She's wearing my jewelry," Amara said quietly. Nina looked over her shoulder. "She's also wearing your husband." The comment should have been funny, but Amara felt nothing but cold calculation. She scrolled through Jessica's posts, noting the timeline. Photos of her and Robert started appearing about 8 months ago. Dinner dates, weekend trips, couples photos where they looked blissfully happy. 8 months. While Amara was working 60-hour weeks to build their financial security, Robert was building a new life with someone else. "Wait," Nina said, pointing at the screen. "Look at this post from last week." It was a photo of Jessica standing in front of a house with a sold sign. The caption read, "Another successful sale. This beautiful home sold in just 2 days. Sometimes the best deals come from people who need to move fast. #real estate, #quick sale, #new beginnings." Amara stared at the screen. "She sold our house. She's a real estate agent. She probably convinced Robert to sell it under market value to make a quick sale. They split the commission and the proceeds." The pieces were falling into place. Robert hadn't just betrayed her. He had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal her financial security while making it look legal. He had used his affair partner's professional connections to facilitate the theft. Amara's phone rang. Her lawyer, Patricia Chin, returning her call from the airport. Amara, I've reviewed the documents you sent. This is more complicated than a simple divorce. If what you're telling me is true, we're looking at potential fraud, forgery, and financial abuse. I need you to come in tomorrow morning so we can start building a case. How long will this take? Depends on how much evidence we can gather. And how dirty he's willing to fight. After hanging up, Amara sat back in her chair. She felt like she was seeing her marriage clearly for the first time. Robert's late nights at the office. His sudden interest in managing their finances, his encouragement for her to take the Dubai trip. It had all been calculated. What are you thinking? Nina asked. I'm thinking Robert made a mistake. He assumed I'd be too heartbroken to fight back. He assumed I'd take his deal and disappear quietly. And instead, Amara smiled for the first time since the phone call in Dubai. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile she wore when she was about to close a particularly difficult deal. Instead, he's about to learn that I didn't build my career by backing down from bullies. And I've never lost a negotiation I really cared about winning. Nina grinned. So what's the plan? First, we gather evidence. Every financial record, every communication, every piece of documentation that shows what he's done. Then we find out exactly how deep this goes. Robert thinks he's outsmarted me, but he's forgotten one thing. What's that? I'm really good at my job. And my job is strategic planning and crisis management. Robert just became my biggest crisis to manage. Amara opened a new document on her laptop and began typing. If Robert wanted to play games, she would show him how the game was really played. The next morning, Amara stood in front of what used to be her home. The new owners had already moved in, and she could see children's toys scattered across the lawn that she had spent weekends carefully landscaping. A swing set stood where her rose garden used to be. Can I help you? A woman emerged from the front door looking concerned. I'm sorry, Amara said, stepping back from the fence. I used to live here. I just wanted to see. The woman's expression softened. Are you Amara? Robert's wife. The question hit her like a physical blow. She was still Robert's wife, technically, though it felt strange to claim that title now. Yes. I'm Sarah. My husband and I bought the house. Robert told us you were getting divorced and needed to sell quickly. Sarah paused, studying Amara's face. He said you were okay with the sale. I was in Dubai when he sold it. I found out through a phone call. Sarah's face went pale. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. We had no idea. The paperwork all looked legitimate, and your signature was on the deed transfer. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. My signature? The real estate agent said you had signed all the paperwork before leaving for your business trip. Everything was notarized and filed properly. Forgery. Add that to the growing list of Robert's crimes. Amara thanked Sarah and walked back to her car, pulling out her phone to call Patricia. He forged my signature on the deed transfer, she said without preamble when Patricia answered. Are you certain? I was never contacted about the sale. Never signed any paperwork. The new owners think I agreed to it, but I have no memory of signing anything because I never did. This changes things significantly. Forging your signature on a deed transfer is a felony. We need to get you to a handwriting expert and start documenting everything. After hanging up, Amara sat in her car looking at the house where she had planned to spend the rest of her life. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. Robert hadn't just left her. He had systematically stolen her life while making it look like she had agreed to it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Robert. We need to talk. Meet me at Cafe Luna at 2 p.m. Amara stared at the message. After everything he had done, he still expected her to jump when he called. She typed back, I'll be there. But she wouldn't be going alone. At 1:45 p.m., Amara sat in Cafe Luna with Patricia beside her and a digital recorder in her purse. They had chosen a table in the back corner where their conversation wouldn't be overheard but could still be recorded clearly. Robert arrived exactly on time, looking like he had stepped out of a magazine. His suit was expensive, his hair perfectly styled, his smile confident. He looked like a man who had everything under control. Amara, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. His smile faltered slightly when he saw Patricia. I thought we were meeting alone. Patricia is my lawyer. I figured we'd need one. Robert's jaw tightened. Fine. This should be simple anyway. I've prepared a settlement offer. He slid a manila folder across the table. Amara opened it, scanning the documents inside. According to Robert's proposal, she would receive $25,000 as a divorce settlement. In exchange, she would sign away all claims to their joint assets and agree not to pursue any legal action against him. $25,000? Amara looked up at him. For an 8-year marriage? It's generous, considering you contributed nothing to our financial success. The words hung in the air like a slap. Amara had worked full-time throughout their marriage, contributing equally to their household expenses and savings. She had supported Robert through his career changes, helped him build his business, and believed in their partnership. I contributed nothing? She asked quietly. You made your little marketing salary, sure. But I built our wealth. I made the investment decisions. I bought the house. Everything we had was because of my work. Patricia leaned forward. Mr. Williams, are you aware that forging your wife's signature on legal documents is a felony? Robert's confident expression flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. The deed transfer for the house. Amara never signed it, yet somehow her signature appears on the documents. She signed it before she left for Dubai. She must have forgotten. I have her travel records, Patricia continued smoothly. She was in client meetings all day before her flight. There was no time for her to sign real estate documents. There's also no record of her visiting a notary, which would have been required for the deed transfer. Amara watched Robert's face as Patricia spoke. She could see the moment he realized his story was falling apart. The confident smile disappeared, replaced by something harder. You're making a mistake, Amara, he said, turning back to her. I'm trying to be fair here. But if you want to make this difficult, I can make it very difficult for you. Is that a threat? It's a reality. I have resources. I have connections. You're a woman scorned trying to take revenge on her ex-husband. How do you think that's going to look in court? Amara felt something cold settle in her chest. This was the real Robert, the one she had been married to for 8 years without ever truly seeing. The charming exterior was just a mask covering someone who viewed other people as obstacles to be overcome or tools to be used. I think, she said quietly, that you've underestimated me. Robert laughed. Have I? You're sitting here with a lawyer trying to intimidate me with forgery charges. But what can you actually prove? Your signature is on the deed. The sale is complete. The money is gone. You can make all the accusations you want, but at the end of the day you're the one with nothing. He stood up, straightening his tie. Take the settlement offer, Amara. It's the best deal you're going to get. After he left, Amara sat in silence for a long moment. Patricia was reviewing her notes, but Amara was thinking about something else entirely. Robert's arrogance, his absolute certainty that he had won, his belief that she had no power to fight back. He thinks he's untouchable, she said finally. Most people like him do, Patricia replied. Until they realize they're not. What do we do next? Patricia smiled grimly. We prove that your husband isn't as smart as he thinks he is. And we make sure he pays for every single thing he's done to you. Amara nodded, feeling something shift inside her. The heartbroken woman who had cried in a Dubai hotel room was gone. In her place was someone harder, smarter, and much more dangerous. Robert wanted to play games? She would show him how the game was really played. The private investigator Patricia recommended looked nothing like Amara had expected. Instead of a grizzled ex-cop, Marcus Thompson was a soft-spoken man in his 40s who looked more like an accountant than a detective. But his credentials were impressive, and his reputation for uncovering financial fraud was exactly what she needed. I've been looking into your husband's activities over the past year, Marcus said, spreading photographs and documents across the conference table in Patricia's office. The affair with Jessica Morrison started about 10 months ago, but their business relationship goes back further. Amara studied the photographs. Robert and Jessica at restaurants, walking hand in hand through Lincoln Park, kissing outside her apartment building. Seeing the evidence of their relationship laid out so clinically should have hurt, but instead she felt oddly detached. Business relationship? Patricia asked. Jessica Morrison isn't just Robert's girlfriend. She's been his business partner for the past 18 months. They've been buying and flipping properties together, using a shell company called Morrison Williams Holdings. Amara's head snapped up. Morrison Williams? He named their company after both of them? It gets worse, Marcus continued. 3 of the properties they flipped were purchased using money from your joint accounts. Robert would withdraw large sums for business investments, but instead of investing in his legitimate company, he was funding their side business. That's embezzlement, Patricia said. It's about to get more interesting, Marcus said, pulling out another set of documents. Your house wasn't the first property they sold under market value. They've been doing it for months, buying properties, making minimal improvements, then selling them quickly through Jessica's real estate connections for less than market value. Amara frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why would they sell for less than they could get? Because Jessica's agency gets the commission on both ends, the buying and selling. Plus, they're not reporting the full sale prices to the IRS. They're skimming money off the top and hiding it in offshore accounts. The pieces clicked together in Amara's mind. Tax evasion. Among other things. But here's the part that should interest you most. Marcus pulled out a final document. Jessica Morrison is married. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. What? She's been married for 3 years to a man named David Morrison. He works in finance, travels frequently for business. Based on my investigation, he has no idea his wife is having an affair. Amara stared at the marriage certificate Marcus had obtained. Jessica Morrison, the woman who had been texting her to leave Robert alone, was married to someone else. The woman who had been planning to marry Robert next month already had a husband. So she's been lying to Robert too, Amara said quietly. It appears that way. I've been tracking her financial records and she's been hiding assets from both men. She has bank accounts that neither Robert nor her husband know about. Patricia leaned back in her chair. This changes our entire strategy. We're not just dealing with adultery and financial fraud. We're dealing with someone who's been systematically deceiving multiple people. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging into things that don't concern you. Some secrets are better left buried. She showed the message to Marcus, who immediately pulled out his own phone. I'll trace this number. Someone's getting nervous. It's probably Jessica, Amara said. She must know we're investigating. Or Robert, Patricia added. Either way, we're getting close to something they don't want us to find. Marcus gathered his documents. I need a few more days to trace the offshore accounts and get records of their property transactions. But I think we have enough to file preliminary charges. After Marcus left, Amara sat alone with Patricia, processing everything she had learned. Her marriage hadn't just been a lie, it had been part of an elaborate fraud scheme. Robert had been using her identity, her money, and her trust to fund his criminal activities with another woman who was already married. How do you feel? Patricia asked. Honestly? Relieved. Relieved? For months I've been wondering what I did wrong. Why Robert fell out of love with me. Whether I could have saved our marriage if I'd been a better wife. Amara looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. But this isn't about love at all. It's about money. Robert didn't leave me for another woman. He left me because I was no longer useful to his schemes. Patricia nodded. You're right. This was never about your marriage. It was about your money. What happens now? Now we turn the tables. We have evidence of fraud, tax evasion, and forgery. We have documentation of their business dealings and proof that they've been hiding assets. We can file criminal charges and civil suits. Amara's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Nina. Turn on Channel 7 News, Nina said without preamble. Right now. Amara and Patricia found a television in the conference room and switched to the local news. The anchor was speaking over footage of a house Amara recognized, one of the properties Robert and Jessica had flipped. Federal investigation into a property flipping scheme that may have defrauded investors and evaded taxes. The FBI raided several properties today, including the offices of Morrison Williams Holdings. Amara's mouth fell open. The FBI. The news report continued with footage of agents carrying boxes out of Jessica's real estate office. The reporter mentioned that the investigation was ongoing and that charges were expected to be filed within the week. Someone else was investigating them, Patricia said. The IRS probably flagged their tax returns. Amara's phone rang. This time it was Robert. Amara, we need to talk. Meet me at... No, she said, cutting him off. I'm done meeting with you. If you want to communicate, you can go through my lawyer. You don't understand. This is serious. I need your help. My help? Amara laughed bitterly. After what you've done to me, you want my help? I never meant for things to get this complicated. Jessica, she's not who I thought she was. Robert, I don't care. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. She hung up and turned to Patricia. I think Robert is about to learn that his perfect plan wasn't so perfect after all. As they watched the news coverage continue, Amara felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not hope for her marriage, that was irreversibly over. But hope for justice. Hope that the truth would come out. Hope that Robert would finally face consequences for his actions. The game was changing, and for the first time since that phone call in Dubai, Amara felt like she might actually win. Chloe's apartment had become Amara's war room. The dining table was covered with legal documents, financial records, and printouts of news articles about the FBI investigation. Nina had claimed the couch as her command center, laptop open, phone constantly buzzing with updates from her network of friends and contacts. "You need to see this," Chloe said, rushing through the door with her tablet. "Jessica Morrison's husband filed for divorce this morning. It's all over social media." Amara looked up from the bank statements she was reviewing. "David Morrison?" "Yes." He posted a statement saying he had no knowledge of his wife's business dealings or extramarital affairs. "He's claiming she defrauded him too." Nina whistled low. "Smart move. He's getting ahead of the story." "It also means Jessica is about to be completely isolated," Amara said. "Robert probably thinks she's going to protect him, but if her own husband is throwing her under the bus." Her phone rang. "Patricia." "Amara, I have updates. First, the FBI wants to interview you. They're building a case against Robert and Jessica's property scheme, and they need your testimony about the financial fraud." "When?" "Tomorrow morning. They're particularly interested in the forged documents and the money that was taken from your joint accounts." Amara felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. This was what she lived for in her professional life. The moment when all the pieces came together and victory became possible. "What's the second update?" "Robert's lawyer called. He wants to negotiate a new settlement." "Let me guess, he's offering more money now that he's facing federal charges?" "Much more. He's willing to return half of the money he took from your accounts, plus give you $100,000 from his business assets." Amara was quiet for a moment. 3 days ago that offer would have seemed like a victory. Now it felt like an insult. "What does he want in return?" "Your silence. He wants you to sign a non-disclosure agreement and refuse to cooperate with the federal investigation." "Tell him no." "Amara, it's a substantial amount of money. You could walk away from this with enough to rebuild your life." "Patricia, I didn't build my career by taking the easy way out. And I'm not going to start now." After hanging up, Amara turned to find Nina and Chloe watching her with identical expressions of pride and concern. "You're really going to testify against him?" Chloe asked. "I'm going to tell the truth. If that hurts Robert, then he should have thought about that before he decided to commit fraud." Nina closed her laptop. "I'm proud of you. But I'm also worried. Robert's desperate now, and desperate people do stupid things." "Like what?" "Like trying to discredit you. Or worse." As if summoned by their conversation, Amara's phone buzzed with a text from yet another unknown number. "You're making a mistake. Stop before you get hurt." Amara showed the message to her friends. Nina immediately grabbed the phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police." "Nina, wait. No. This is harassment. You're getting threatening messages and now you're going to testify in a federal case. This isn't just about your divorce anymore." While Nina called the police, Amara sat back and thought about how much her life had changed in just a few days. A week ago, she had been a heartbroken woman trying to process her husband's betrayal. Now she was a key witness in a federal fraud case. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her assistant from work. "Amara, I'm sorry to bother you, but I just got a strange call. Someone claiming to be from the FBI wanted to know about your travel schedule and your client meetings." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I told them they needed to go through official channels. But it was weird. They asked specifically about the Dubai trip and whether you had any financial troubles." Amara felt a chill. What did the caller sound like? Male, professional, but something felt off about it. I don't think it was really the FBI. After hanging up, Amara realized what was happening. Robert was trying to build a case against her credibility. He was probably planning to claim that she had been involved in the fraud scheme, or that she had fled to Dubai to avoid prosecution. "He's trying to frame me," she said to Nina and Chloe. "Frame you for what?" "For being part of the fraud. If he can make it look like I was involved in the property scheme, then my testimony becomes worthless." Nina looked up from her phone. "The police are sending someone over to take a report about the threatening messages. But Amara, maybe you should consider protective custody." "I'm not hiding." "Then at least consider staying somewhere Robert can't find you." Amara was about to protest when her phone rang again. This time it was Marcus, the private investigator. "Amara, I've been trying to reach you. We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "I was at my office this morning and noticed signs that someone had been inside. Nothing was taken, but my files were disturbed. Someone was looking for information about you. The room felt suddenly cold. Do you think it was Robert? I don't know. But I think someone is trying to stay ahead of our investigation. I'm moving all the files to a secure location, and I think you should consider doing the same with any documents you have. After Marcus hung up, Amara looked around Chloe's apartment at the papers scattered across every surface. If someone was willing to break into a private investigator's office, they wouldn't hesitate to search her friends' homes. We need to get all of this to Patricia's office, she said. Tonight. As they began gathering documents, Amara felt a strange sense of clarity. Robert had underestimated her again. He thought intimidation and threats would make her back down. Instead, they had only strengthened her resolve. You know what? She said, standing up straight. I'm done being afraid. I'm done letting Robert control this situation. What do you mean? Chloe asked. I mean, it's time to stop playing defense. We have evidence of fraud, tax evasion, and forgery. We have documentation of his threats and harassment. We have proof that he's trying to obstruct a federal investigation. Nina grinned. You're going on the offensive. I'm going to destroy him the same way he tried to destroy me. Methodically, systematically, and completely legally. Amara picked up her phone and called Patricia. I want to file a civil suit against Robert for fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I want to file criminal charges for the forged documents and the threatening messages. And I want to make sure the FBI knows about his attempts to intimidate witnesses. Amara, are you sure? Once we file these charges, there's no going back. This becomes a full-scale legal war. Good. Because I'm done trying to negotiate with a man who thinks he can threaten me into silence. After hanging up, Amara looked at her two best friends. For the first time since Dubai, she felt like herself again. Not the heartbroken wife, not the victim of Robert's schemes, but the strong, intelligent woman who had built her career on strategic thinking and refusing to back down from bullies. What can we do to help? Nina asked. Help me pack these documents. Tomorrow we're going to show Robert that he picked the wrong woman to mess with. As they worked, Amara's phone buzzed with one final message from the unknown number, last warning. She showed it to Nina and Chloe, then deleted it without responding. Let Robert send his threats. Let him try to intimidate her. Let him think he still held all the power. Tomorrow she would walk into that FBI office and tell them everything. She would hand over every document, every piece of evidence, every detail of Robert's fraud scheme. And then she would watch as his perfect plan crumbled around him. The game was about to change, and this time Amara was going to win. The FBI field office in Chicago was nothing like the dramatic buildings Amara had seen in movies. It was a plain government building with fluorescent lights and generic office furniture. But the agents who interviewed her were sharp, professional, and very interested in what she had to say. Special Agent Maria Rodriguez led the interview, with Agent James Park taking notes. They had been investigating Morrison Williams Holdings for 3 months, following tips from the IRS about suspicious tax filings. Mrs. Williams, we understand your husband used funds from your joint accounts to finance property purchases through Morrison Williams Holdings. Can you walk us through how those transactions appeared on your bank statements? Amara opened her folder of financial records. Robert handled most of our banking, but I reviewed the statements monthly. These withdrawals were labeled as business investments for his consulting company. She pointed to a series of large withdrawals over the past year. I asked him about them several times. He always said he was expanding his business, that the investments would pay off in the long run. Did you ever sign any documents related to these investments? No. I assumed they were related to his existing business, which was solely in his name. Agent Rodriguez made notes. We've traced these funds to property purchases made by Morrison Williams Holdings. Your husband and Jessica Morrison were using the money to buy distressed properties, make minimal improvements, then sell them through Ms. Morrison's real estate agency. That doesn't sound illegal, Amara said. It isn't unless you're not reporting the full sale prices to the IRS. We've found evidence that they were skimming money from sales and hiding it in offshore accounts. Agent Park leaned forward. We also have evidence that they were inflating the improvement costs on their tax returns. They'd claimed to spend $20,000 on renovations but only spend $5,000, then pocket the difference. How much money are we talking about? Conservatively? About $800,000 in unreported income over the past 18 months. Amara felt sick. Robert had been stealing from her to fund a tax evasion scheme that had netted him nearly $1 million. No wonder he had been so confident during their divorce negotiation. There's something else, Agent Rodriguez said. We believe your husband forged your signature on several loan documents. He took out lines of credit using your identity without your knowledge. How is that possible? He had access to your personal information, your social security number, your employment records. He could have easily applied for credit in your name. The implications hit Amara like a physical blow. How much debt am I responsible for? We're still investigating, but it appears to be substantial. You'll want to contact the credit bureaus immediately and place fraud alerts on your accounts. After the interview, Amara sat in her car in the FBI parking lot, trying to process what she had learned. Robert hadn't just stolen her money, he had stolen her identity. He had used her credit, her name, her financial reputation to fund his criminal enterprise. Her phone buzzed. A text from Robert. I heard you went to the FBI. That was a mistake. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are. Amara screenshot the message and forwarded it to Agent Rodriguez. Within minutes, her phone rang. Mrs. Williams, we need to talk about witness protection. Your husband is clearly willing to escalate this situation. I'm not going into hiding. Then at least consider a restraining order. We can have local police monitor your location. Amara thought about it. The smart thing to do would be to accept protection, to let the FBI handle everything while she stayed safely out of sight. But she hadn't built her career by hiding from difficult situations. I'll take the restraining order, she said. But I'm not going into hiding. That evening, Amara met with Patricia to review the latest developments. The civil suit against Robert was moving forward, and they had documented enough evidence to file criminal charges for fraud and identity theft. The good news is that the FBI investigation gives us significant leverage, Patricia said. Robert is facing federal charges that could result in serious prison time. He's going to be desperate to make a deal. What kind of deal? He'll probably offer to return all the money he stole, plus damages, in exchange for your cooperation in getting the charges reduced. Amara shook her head. I'm not interested in helping him avoid consequences. Even if it means you get your money back faster? Patricia, this isn't about money anymore. It's about justice. Robert systematically destroyed my life while making me believe I was at fault for our marriage failing. He stole my identity, my financial security, and my trust. I want him to face the full consequences of his actions. Patricia smiled grimly. Then we're going to trial. Fair warning, it's going to get ugly. Robert will try to attack your character, your career, your credibility. He'll claim you were complicit in the fraud scheme. Let him try. I have 8 years of employment records, tax returns, and financial documentation that prove I had nothing to do with his schemes. What about Jessica Morrison? Have you considered what happens to her? Amara had been thinking about Jessica a lot lately. The other woman who had been planning to marry Robert while still married to someone else. The real estate agent who had helped orchestrate the fraud scheme. Jessica made her choices, Amara said. She chose to have an affair with a married man. She chose to participate in tax evasion and fraud. She chose to help Robert steal from me. Whatever happens to her is the consequence of her own actions. And if she tries to make a deal by testifying against Robert? Then she's smarter than I gave her credit for. But it doesn't change what she did. As Amara left Patricia's office, she felt a sense of anticipation she hadn't experienced in weeks. The investigation was moving forward, the evidence was mounting, and Robert was about to face consequences for his actions. Her phone buzzed with a call from Nina. You need to see the news, Nina said. Jessica Morrison was arrested this afternoon. Amara turned on the radio in her car and caught the tail end of a news report about the arrest. Jessica had been charged with tax evasion, fraud, and conspiracy. Her real estate license had been suspended, and she was facing up to 10 years in federal prison. What about Robert? Amara asked. No arrest yet, but the reporter said charges are expected within the week. As Amara drove home to Nina's apartment, she thought about the woman who had been planning to marry her husband. Jessica Morrison had probably thought she was getting a successful businessman who would give her the life she wanted. Instead, she had gotten a criminal who was about to drag her down with him. The irony wasn't lost on Amara. Jessica had helped Robert destroy her life, and now Robert was destroying Jessica's life in return. It was a perfect circle of betrayal and consequences. Amara's phone rang one more time. This time it was Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Williams, I wanted to let you know that we've arrested your husband. He's been charged with fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. He's in federal custody. Amara pulled over to the side of the road. When? About an hour ago. He's being held without bail due to flight risk. After hanging up, Amara sat in her car and waited to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, vindication. Instead she felt empty. 8 years of marriage and it had come to this, her husband in federal prison facing decades behind bars. But as she started the car and drove toward Nina's apartment, she realized the emptiness wasn't sadness. It was freedom. For the first time in months, she didn't have to worry about Robert's next move. She didn't have to brace for his manipulation or his threats. The game was over and she had won. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and federal agents. Amara sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, watching as Robert was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his circumstances. Their eyes met for a moment across the courtroom. Robert's expression was a mixture of anger and desperation. He mouthed something that looked like please, but Amara turned away. She had nothing to say to him. The bail hearing was brief. Federal prosecutors argued that Robert was a flight risk, pointing to his offshore accounts and connections to international business. His lawyer argued that he was a respected businessman with ties to the community. The judge denied bail. As Robert was led away, Amara felt a tap on her shoulder. Agent Rodriguez was standing behind her. "Mrs. Williams, we need to discuss your testimony. The grand jury is scheduled to hear your case next week." They walked to a quiet corner of the courthouse. Agent Rodriguez looked serious. "We've uncovered more evidence since our last conversation. Your husband's fraud scheme was much larger than we initially thought." "How much larger?" "We've identified at least 12 properties that were purchased using funds from accounts with your name on them. The total amount of money involved is close to $1.8 million. Amara felt dizzy. $1,800,000? Your husband was very systematic. He would take out lines of credit using your identity, use the money to buy properties through Morrison Williams Holdings, then sell them and hide the profits offshore. When the credit payments came due, he would use money from your joint accounts to pay them off. So I was unknowingly funding my own financial destruction." "That's an accurate way to put it. We've also found evidence that he was planning to leave the country. He had applied for a passport under a false name and had been transferring money to accounts in the Cayman Islands." The revelation hit Amara like a physical blow. Robert hadn't just been planning to divorce her, he had been planning to disappear entirely, leaving her responsible for millions in debt while he lived comfortably in a country with no extradition treaty. How long had he been planning this? Based on the financial records, at least 2 years. Possibly longer. 2 years. While Amara had been working to build their future together, Robert had been systematically planning her destruction. Every conversation about their retirement plans, every discussion about buying a bigger house, every moment of intimacy had been a lie. What happens now? The grand jury will hear your testimony next week. If they return an indictment, which is almost certain, your husband will face trial within 6 months. Jessica Morrison has already agreed to testify for the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's testifying against Robert? She's telling us everything. How they met, how they started the business, how they plan to leave their respective spouses and start a new life together. She's also admitted to helping him forge your signature on multiple documents. Amara wasn't surprised. Jessica had always been the weaker partner in their conspiracy. Now that she was facing serious prison time, she was doing whatever she could to save herself. What about her husband, David Morrison? He's filed for divorce and is cooperating with our investigation. It appears he was genuinely unaware of his wife's activities. That evening, Amara sat in Nina's apartment, reviewing the documents Agent Rodriguez had given her. The scope of Robert's betrayal was staggering. He had opened credit cards in her name, taken out personal loans using her identity, and even applied for a mortgage on a property she had never seen. "How did you not know?" Chloe asked, reading over her shoulder. "He handled all our finances. I trusted him." Amara shook her head. "I thought I was being a good wife by letting him manage our money. I thought it showed that I trusted him." "You couldn't have known," Nina said firmly. "He was deliberately hiding this from you. But I should have paid more attention. I should have insisted on being more involved in our financial decisions." Amara, stop. You're not responsible for Robert's crimes. He made deliberate choices to betray you and break the law. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Robert's lawyer wants to meet. He's ready to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" Amara replied. "Full restitution plus damages. He'll plead guilty to all charges and provide information about other people involved in the scheme." Amara stared at the message. Robert was finally ready to admit what he had done. But his admission came only after he had been caught, only after he was facing decades in prison. "Tell him I'll consider it," she typed back. "But I want to hear what he has to say first." The meeting was scheduled for the next morning at the federal courthouse. Amara would attend with Patricia and Agent Rodriguez. Robert would be there with his lawyer, probably trying to negotiate his way out of the consequences of his actions. As she prepared for bed, Amara thought about the woman she had been a month ago. That woman had been devastated by her husband's betrayal, convinced that she had somehow failed as a wife. She had been willing to accept blame for the end of her marriage, to quietly disappear and rebuild her life from nothing. The woman she was now understood that Robert's betrayal had nothing to do with her failure and everything to do with his greed and criminality. She understood that his lies about their marriage had been part of a larger pattern of deception and manipulation. Tomorrow she would sit across from Robert and listen to his attempts to minimize his crimes and shift blame to others. She would watch him try to manipulate the situation one final time. But she would not be manipulated. She would not be intimidated. She would not be silenced. Robert had spent 2 years planning her destruction. Now she was going to spend whatever time it took to see that justice was served. The game was almost over, and Amara was going to make sure she won decisively. The conference room at the federal courthouse felt like a gladiator arena. Amara sat between Patricia and Agent Rodriguez, facing Robert across a long table. Robert's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Kenneth Walsh, had a stack of documents in front of him. Robert looked terrible. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. His orange jumpsuit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. This was not the polished businessman who had destroyed her life with such casual cruelty. "Thank you for coming," Walsh began. "My client wants to make things right." "Your client wants to avoid spending the rest of his life in prison," Patricia replied coldly. Robert leaned forward. "Amara, I know you hate me. I know I've hurt you. But I'm trying to fix this. Fix this." Amara's voice was quiet but steady. "You systematically stole my identity, destroyed my credit, and planned to leave me responsible for nearly $2 million in debt. How exactly do you plan to fix that?" "I can pay it back. All of it. The money I took from our accounts, the debt I created in your name, plus additional damages for what I put you through." "Where is this money coming from?" Walsh slid a document across the table. "Your husband has been cooperating with federal investigators. He's provided information about other people involved in similar schemes. In exchange, he's been able to recover funds from offshore accounts." Amara studied the document. It was a detailed accounting of Robert's hidden assets, including accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. The total amount was substantial, more than enough to cover the money he had stolen. What does he want in return? A recommendation for a reduced sentence. Instead of 20 years, he would serve 5 to 7 years. And Jessica Morrison? She's already made her deal. She'll serve 2 years and cooperate fully with the investigation. Amara looked at Robert, who was watching her with desperate hope in his eyes. "You want me to help you get a reduced sentence?" "I want you to forgive me," Robert said quietly. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I've destroyed everything we had. But I'm asking you to find it in your heart to forgive me." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Amara felt a familiar rage building in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "Robert, do you remember what you told me when we met at the cafe? You said I had contributed nothing to our financial success. You said everything we had was because of your work." Robert's face flushed. "I was angry. I didn't mean. You meant every word. And you were right in a way. Everything we had was because of your work. Your criminal work. Your fraud, your theft, your systematic destruction of my life." "Amara, please. I'm not finished." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "You spent 2 years planning this. 2 years lying to me, stealing from me, preparing to abandon me. You made me believe I was the problem in our marriage. You made me think I wasn't good enough, wasn't successful enough, wasn't worthy of love." Robert's lawyer tried to interrupt, but Amara continued. "You called me in Dubai, where I was closing the biggest deal of my career, and told me you were leaving me like I was a business transaction you were canceling. You didn't just break my heart, Robert. You tried to break my spirit." "I'm sorry," Robert whispered. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you're facing consequences. But you're not sorry for what you did to me." Agent Rodriguez cleared her throat. "Mrs. Williams, we need to know if you'll support a plea agreement." Amara was quiet for a long moment. In the silence, she could hear Robert's labored breathing, the ticking of the wall clock, the distant sound of traffic outside. I'll agree to the plea deal, she said finally. But not because I forgive you, Robert. I'll agree because I want this over. I want to move on with my life, and I can't do that while you're fighting these charges and dragging this out for years. Robert's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Thank you, Amara. I know I don't deserve. You don't deserve anything, she cut him off. You deserve to spend the rest of your life in prison. But I deserve to be free of you, and this deal gives me that freedom. She stood up, gathering her purse. I have one condition. I never want to see you again. No letters, no phone calls, no contact through mutual friends. When you get out of prison, you stay away from me. Robert nodded desperately. Of course. Whatever you want. What I want is for you to understand that you didn't break me. You tried to destroy me, but you failed. I'm stronger now than I was when we were married. I'm smarter, more independent, and infinitely better off without you. She turned to Patricia. File the paperwork. Let's end this. As they left the conference room, Amara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The confrontation she had been dreading was over, and she had said everything she needed to say. How do you feel? Patricia asked as they walked down the courthouse steps. Free, Amara replied. For the first time in months, I feel completely free. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nina. Saw the news. Robert took a plea deal. Are you okay? I'm perfect, Amara typed back. This chapter of my life is finally over. But as she got into her car, Amara realized she wasn't quite ready to close the book on Robert Williams. There was still one more thing she needed to do, one final piece of business that would complete her transformation from victim to victor. She pulled out her phone and dialed Agent Rodriguez. I want to know about the other people Robert mentioned. The ones involved in similar schemes. Mrs. Williams, that's not really your concern. It is if they're stealing from other women the way Robert stole from me. I want to help you stop them. Agent Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. That's not typically how we handle these cases. Then maybe it's time to try a different approach. I know how these men think, how they operate. I can help you catch them. You want to work with the FBI? I want to make sure no other woman goes through what I went through. Robert was part of a larger network, wasn't he? Men who prey on their wives' trust and steal their identities. There are others, yes. Then let's catch them all. As Amara drove away from the courthouse, she felt a new sense of purpose. Robert's betrayal had nearly destroyed her, but it had also revealed a strength she hadn't known she possessed. She had survived his worst efforts to break her, and now she was going to use that experience to help others. The game was over, but her real work was just beginning. 3 months after Robert's plea deal, Amara stood in the conference room of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, looking at a wall covered with photographs, bank records, and connection charts. She had become an unofficial consultant on domestic financial fraud cases, helping agents understand the psychological tactics used by spouses who stole from their partners. We've identified 12 similar cases in the past 5 years, Agent Rodriguez explained to the room full of investigators. All following the same pattern. Husbands who systematically steal their wives' identities to fund business ventures or affairs. Amara studied the photographs of the women involved. They looked like her, successful, intelligent, trusting. Women who had believed in their marriages and never suspected their husbands were capable of such elaborate deception. The problem is that most of these women don't realize they're victims until it's too late, she said. They trust their husbands to handle the finances, so they don't notice the identity theft until the divorce papers are filed. What's the solution? Agent Park asked. Education. We need to teach women the warning signs, help them understand how to protect themselves. It had been Amara's idea to create a task force focused on domestic financial fraud. She had volunteered to speak at seminars, write articles, and help other women recognize the signs of financial abuse. The FBI had been skeptical at first, but her insights had helped them solve several cases. Mrs. Williams, we have an update on the Morrison case, Agent Rodriguez said after the meeting ended. What kind of update? Jessica Morrison was released from prison yesterday. She served 18 months of her 2-year sentence. Amara felt a familiar knot in her stomach. She had managed to avoid thinking about Jessica for months, focusing instead on her work with the FBI and rebuilding her life. Is she staying in Chicago? We don't know. She's required to report to a probation officer, but she could be living anywhere in the district. That evening, Amara sat in her new apartment, a sleek high-rise with a view of Lake Michigan, and tried to process the news. Jessica Morrison was free, while Robert still had 4 years left on his sentence. It didn't seem fair, but then again, Jessica had cooperated with the investigation from the beginning. Her phone rang. It was Nina. Did you hear about Jessica? The FBI told me. She's out of prison. Are you worried? Amara considered the question. A year ago she would have been terrified. Now she felt nothing but indifference. No, she said finally. Jessica Morrison can't hurt me anymore. She's a convicted felon with no money, no career, and no prospects. I'm doing work I love, helping other women, and building a life that's better than anything I had with Robert. Speaking of building a life, Nina said carefully, how are things with Marcus? Amara smiled. Marcus Thompson, the private investigator who had helped her build the case against Robert, had become much more than a professional contact. Their relationship had developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared experiences rather than passion and promises. Good, she said. Really good. Good enough to consider moving in together? We're talking about it. But I'm not in any hurry. I'm enjoying my independence. After hanging up, Amara walked to her window and looked out at the city lights. Chicago looked different now, not like the place where her life had been destroyed, but like the place where she had rebuilt herself into someone stronger. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I need to talk to you. It's important. Jessica. Amara stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it without responding. 20 minutes later, another text. Please. I have information about Robert that you need to know. This time, Amara hesitated. What could Jessica possibly know that would be important to her now? Robert was in prison, his assets had been seized, and the divorce had been finalized months ago. She typed back, I'm not interested in anything you have to say. The response came immediately, Robert wasn't working alone. There are others and they're still active. I can help you stop them. Amara's finger hovered over the delete button. But something about the message made her pause. She had spent months working with the FBI to identify other domestic financial fraud cases. If Jessica had information about a larger network, against her better judgment, she typed, meet me at the Starbucks on Michigan Avenue tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. The next afternoon, Amara arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where she could see the entire room. She had dressed professionally, a sharp business suit that made her feel confident and in control. Jessica arrived exactly on time, looking nothing like the glamorous real estate agent from the social media photos. Prison had changed her. She was thinner, paler, and moved with the careful wariness of someone who had learned not to trust anyone. Thank you for coming, Jessica said, sliding into the seat across from her. You have 5 minutes. What do you want? I want to help you stop the others. What others? Jessica pulled out a notebook and slid it across the table. Robert was part of a network. Men who specialize in financial fraud targeting their wives. They share information, techniques, even resources. Amara opened the notebook. It was filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. At least 20 different cases involving men across the Midwest. How do you know about this? Robert introduced me to the group. He was recruiting new members, teaching them his methods. I helped him set up some of the schemes. And you're telling me this why? Jessica was quiet for a moment. Because I know what I did was wrong. I helped him destroy your life and I can't take that back. But I can help you make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Amara studied the woman across from her. Jessica looked genuinely remorseful, but Amara had learned not to trust appearances. What do you get out of this? Nothing. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship. I'm asking for a chance to do something right. You could take this information to the FBI yourself. I could. But they don't trust me. I'm a convicted felon who helped orchestrate these schemes. You're a victim who's been working with them for months. They'll listen to you. Amara closed the notebook. Even if I believe you, even if this information is legitimate, why should I work with you? You helped Robert steal from me. You were planning to marry him while you were already married to someone else. Because stopping these men is more important than our personal history. Because there are women out there right now who are being targeted the same way you were. Jessica leaned forward. Robert used to brag about how easy it was to manipulate you. He said you were so trusting, so focused on your career, that you never questioned his financial decisions. He said you were the perfect mark. The words hit Amara like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. Go on. He taught other men to look for women like you. Successful, independent women who trust their husbands with financial decisions. Women who are too busy building their careers to notice what's happening to their bank accounts. Amara felt a familiar rage building in her chest. Even from prison, Robert was still trying to hurt her, still treating her like a business transaction to be exploited. What's your proposal? I have contacts in the network. I can help you identify the active members, understand their methods, maybe even help you catch them in the act. And in exchange? Nothing. I just want to help stop them. Amara studied Jessica's face, looking for signs of deception. She saw desperation, shame, and what looked like genuine remorse. But she also saw the calculating intelligence that had made Jessica an effective partner in Robert's schemes. I'll think about it, she said finally. There's one more thing, Jessica said as Amara stood to leave. Robert is planning to appeal his sentence. He's claiming that I coerced him into the fraud scheme, that he was as much a victim as you were. What? His new lawyer thinks he can get his sentence reduced by claiming diminished capacity. He's going to say that I manipulated him into committing crimes he never would have committed on his own. Amara sat back down. Is that true? No. The fraud scheme was Robert's idea from the beginning. He recruited me, taught me the methods, and planned every detail. But he's desperate to get out of prison, and he's willing to lie about anything to make that happen. When is the appeal hearing? Next month. And Amara? If he wins, he could be out in 2 years instead of 4. As Jessica left, Amara sat alone in the coffee shop, staring at the notebook. She had thought her battle with Robert was over, but apparently he was still fighting. Still trying to manipulate the system, still trying to avoid consequences for his actions. She pulled out her phone and called Agent Rodriguez. I need to meet with you, she said. I have new information about Robert's network. And I think we need to stop his appeal. The game wasn't over after all. But this time, Amara was going to make sure she won permanently. The appeals court hearing was scheduled for a cold Tuesday morning in November. Amara sat in the front row of the packed courtroom, flanked by Agent Rodriguez and Patricia. She had spent the past month working with the FBI to build a case against Robert's network, using Jessica's information to identify and arrest 7 other men involved in similar schemes. Robert looked different from the last time she had seen him. Prison had hardened him, made him more desperate. He sat at the defendant's table in a pressed suit, his hair neatly combed, trying to project the image of a reformed man who had been led astray. His new lawyer, a slick operator named David Chin, stood to address the court. Your Honor, my client was the victim of an elaborate manipulation scheme orchestrated by Jessica Morrison. She used her real estate expertise and her romantic relationship with my client to coerce him into participating in financial fraud. Mr. Williams was as much a victim as his wife. Amara felt her jaw clench. Even after everything, Robert was still trying to play the victim, still trying to avoid responsibility for his actions. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Kim, stood to respond. Your Honor, the government has substantial evidence that Mr. Williams was the architect of this fraud scheme, not a victim of it. We have recordings of phone calls where he discusses recruiting other men to participate in similar schemes. We have documentation showing that he planned these crimes for over 2 years before involving Ms. Morrison. What recordings? Chin asked. Phone calls between Mr. Williams and other members of his fraud network, recorded as part of an ongoing FBI investigation. In these calls, Mr. Williams clearly identifies himself as the leader of the group and discusses strategies for targeting wealthy women. Amara felt a surge of satisfaction. The FBI had been monitoring Robert's prison phone calls, and he had been stupid enough to discuss his criminal activities with other inmates and outside contacts. Judge Margaret Foster reviewed the documents in front of her. Mr. Chin, does your client deny making these phone calls? Chin whispered urgently with Robert before responding. Your Honor, those conversations were taken out of context. My client was simply trying to help other men avoid making the same mistakes he made. By teaching them how to commit financial fraud? By warning them about the dangers of becoming involved with manipulative women. Judge Foster's expression darkened. Mr. Chin, I've reviewed the transcripts of these calls. Your client wasn't warning anyone about anything. He was providing detailed instructions on how to forge signatures, hide assets, and manipulate financial institutions. Amara watched Robert's face as the judge spoke. The confident mask was slipping, revealing the desperate man underneath. Furthermore, Judge Foster continued, the court has received a detailed report from the FBI about Mr. Williams' role in a larger criminal network. This report indicates that your client recruited at least 12 other individuals to participate in similar fraud schemes, resulting in losses of over $5 million to victims across 3 states. Chin tried one more time. Your Honor, my client's cooperation with law enforcement should be considered. Your client's cooperation came only after he was caught and faced life in prison. And according to the prosecution's evidence, he has continued to participate in criminal activities while incarcerated. Judge Foster looked directly at Robert. Mr. Williams, you have shown no genuine remorse for your crimes. You have continued to blame others for your actions, and you have used your time in prison to expand your criminal network rather than reflect on the harm you've caused. Your appeal is denied, and I'm adding 2 additional years to your sentence for criminal conspiracy while incarcerated. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Robert's face went white as he realized what had just happened. Instead of getting a reduced sentence, he was now facing 9 years in federal prison. As the bailiff led Robert away, he turned to look at Amara one final time. She met his gaze steadily, her expression neutral. She felt no satisfaction in his additional punishment, but she felt complete vindication. Robert had finally faced the full consequences of his actions. Outside the courthouse, Agent Rodriguez shook Amara's hand. We couldn't have done this without your help. The network you helped us identify has been completely dismantled. 7 men are in prison, and we've recovered over $3 million for their victims. What about Jessica? She's entering witness protection. Her testimony was crucial in several of the other cases, and there have been threats against her life from some of the men we arrested. Amara nodded. She felt no sympathy for Jessica, but she respected the woman's decision to finally do the right thing. 6 months later, Amara stood in front of a packed auditorium at Northwestern University, giving a lecture on financial fraud prevention. She had left her marketing job to start a non-profit organization dedicated to helping women recognize and prevent domestic financial abuse. The most important thing to remember, she told the audience of women attorneys, is that financial abuse is rarely about money. It's about power and control. The money is just the weapon they use to maintain that control. After the lecture, a young woman approached her. Ms. Williams, I think my husband might be stealing from me. What should I do? Amara spent 20 minutes with the woman, giving her contact information for attorneys and financial advisors who specialized in these cases. It was conversations like this that made her new career meaningful. That evening, Amara returned to her apartment to find Marcus cooking dinner in her kitchen. They had been living together for 3 months now, but she still felt a small thrill at coming home to someone who genuinely cared about her. How did the lecture go? He asked, kissing her hello. Good. We might have helped another woman escape her situation before it gets too bad. You're doing important work. We're doing important work, she corrected. Marcus had left his private investigation business to become the director of security for her nonprofit. Together, they were building something that mattered. Over dinner, Marcus showed her a newspaper article about Robert's latest appeal being denied. He's still trying to get out early, Marcus said. He'll never stop trying. But it doesn't matter anymore. He can't hurt me from prison, and by the time he gets out, I'll be so far beyond anything he could reach that he might as well not exist. Amara's phone rang. It was Nina. Did you see the news about Robert's appeal? Marcus just showed me. 9 years total now. How do you feel? Amara considered the question. A year ago, she would have wanted to feel vindicated, triumphant, satisfied with Robert's punishment. Now she felt something much better. I feel free, she said. Completely, genuinely free. After dinner, Amara and Marcus walked along Lake Michigan, watching the sunset reflect off the water. The city stretched out behind them, full of possibilities and opportunities. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked. The way everything happened? You mean, do I regret that Robert destroyed our marriage and tried to ruin my life? I mean, do you regret the path that led you to where you are now? Amara thought about it. If Robert hadn't betrayed her, she would still be in her old life, working in marketing, believing in a marriage that was built on lies. She would never have discovered her passion for helping other women, never have built her nonprofit, never have met Marcus. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. Robert thought he was destroying me, but he actually freed me to become who I was meant to be. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching boats drift across the lake. There's something I want to ask you, Marcus said, stopping near a park bench. Amara felt her heart skip. What? I know you've been hurt and I know you're cautious about making big commitments. But I also know that what we have is real and it's built on honesty and respect. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm not asking you to forget your past or pretend that it didn't happen. I'm asking you to build a future with me as equals, as partners. Amara looked at the ring box, then at Marcus's face. She saw love there but also respect. He wasn't trying to rescue her or complete her. He was asking to share a life with someone he saw as his equal. Yes, she said, surprising herself with how quickly and confidently the word came out. Yes, I want to build a future with you. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, Amara thought about the woman she had been in that Dubai hotel room, devastated by a phone call that had seemed to end her world. That woman had believed her worth was tied to her marriage, her security dependent on her husband's honesty. The woman she was now understood that her worth came from within, that her security came from her own strength and intelligence, and that love was something to be shared between equals, not something to be conquered or controlled. Robert had tried to break her, but he had instead revealed just how unbreakable she really was. 2 years later, Amara stood in a different courtroom, this time as an expert witness in a case involving domestic financial fraud. The defendant was one of Robert's former associates, a man who had stolen over $800,000 from his wife while planning to abandon her and their children. As she testified about the psychological tactics used by financial abusers, Amara saw the defendant's wife in the gallery. The woman looked the way Amara had felt in those first weeks after Robert's betrayal, lost, confused, ashamed. After the hearing, Amara approached her. "Mrs. Patterson? I'm Amara Williams. I run a non-profit that helps women in situations like yours." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I don't understand how this happened. I thought we had a good marriage. I thought he loved me. He probably did love you in his own way, but he loved money and control more. And that's not your fault. What do I do now?" "Now you rebuild. It's going to be hard, but you're going to discover that you're stronger than you ever imagined. And you're not going to do it alone." Amara handed her a card with the nonprofit's contact information. "Call me tomorrow. We'll help you figure out the next steps." As she walked out of the courthouse, Amara reflected on how much her life had changed. She was engaged to a man who respected her intelligence and independence. Her nonprofit was thriving, helping hundreds of women each year. She had found purpose in her pain and meaning in her survival. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did it go? Another conviction. Another woman free to rebuild her life. Dinner to celebrate? Always. As Amara drove home through the Chicago streets, she thought about Robert, still sitting in his prison cell, probably still convinced that he was the victim of circumstance rather than the architect of his own destruction. She had heard through Agent Rodriguez that Robert had become something of a pariah in prison. The other inmates had little tolerance for men who stole from their wives, and his attempts to recruit new members for his fraud network had earned him enemies rather than allies. Jessica had disappeared into witness protection and, according to rumors, was living somewhere in the Pacific Northwest under a new identity. Amara hoped she was using her second chance to build an honest life. But mostly, Amara didn't think about either of them anymore. They were part of her past, lessons learned and overcome. Her focus was on the future she was building with Marcus, the work she was doing with her nonprofit, and the life she had created from the ashes of her marriage. Robert had called her from Dubai to tell her that her old life was over. He had been right about that much. Her old life was over. But her new life, the one she had built through strength, determination, and an absolute refusal to be broken, was everything she had never known she wanted. As she pulled into her driveway, Amara smiled. She had won the game after all. Not by beating Robert, but by becoming someone who could never be destroyed by someone like him again. The revenge she had taken wasn't violent or cruel. It was something much more powerful. She had refused to let his betrayal define her, and she had used her experience to help others escape the same trap. Robert had tried to erase her from his life, but she had erased him from hers in a much more complete way. He was still obsessing over their past while she was building a future he could never touch. And that, Amara thought as she walked into her home where Marcus was waiting with dinner and flowers, was the sweetest victory of all.